everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Finding Your Fit, Thriving in Technology Licensing, Industry versus Academia. My name is Quentin Thomas, and I'm your host for today's webinar. We are thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be an informative and inspiring session, especially tailored for technology transfer professionals interested in learning about industry and academic roles, as well as their differences and similarities. In today's fast-paced and ever-evolving landscape, understanding the key skills and experiences required to succeed in technology transfer is more important than ever. Our expert panelists will share their valuable insights on career development, professional growth, and a few intangibles in the field. Whether you're looking to advance your career, gain new skills, or simply understand the industry better, you're in the right place. Today's webinar will include 3 parts. First, we will compare and contrast academic versus industry roles, including topics such as titles and roles, required skills and experiences, and other intangibles. In part 2, we will discuss the advantages and potential challenges of gaining experience in both industry and academia to help you understand how a diverse background can impact your career trajectory. And then we'll hop into our Q&A session. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly share a few tips on how to get the most out of today's session. This is an interactive discussion with a live Q&A at the end. Use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit your questions through the session. We may not get to all of your questions, but we'll do our best. We encourage you to engage openly in the chat to interact with one another as well. Jeff Bond from Chat with Leaders Media is serving as today's engagement director, so he will be active in the Zoom chat and responding to your comments. We want this session to be an opportunity for you to learn from one another as well as our panelists. Before we dive into our discussion, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Certified Licensing Professionals Incorporated and Gardner Innovation Search Partners, for their generous support in making this webinar possible. Their commitment to fostering professional development in technology transfer and technology commercialization is appreciated. Now, I'll pass it over to Don Taylor with CLP and Glen Gardner with Gardner Innovation Search Partners to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their organizations. Don, over to you.
Thank you, Quentin. It's wonderful to be here with such an amazing panel. And it's just a delight because learning from you all here today is one of my biggest objectives. And so we really encourage that Q&A. I'll just do some quick background on CLP and some quick background on me so you have some perspective. So first, regarding the CLP, I'm honored to be the chairperson for 2024, serving with just so many accomplished other board members, leaders in the licensing field. The CLP, or Certified Licensing Professionals, we're a credentialing organization for licensing professionals. And so we confer the CLP and the CLP Associate, which is a new program, to help early stage career individuals into credentialing. The CLP culminates in an exam, much like you might find for a CPA or maybe a patent agent, and it allows for a distinction of your mastery of the material. Just quickly, the 2024 mission for CLP, we're here to engage people, to empower people like you, and to support the global community of licensing professionals. And we see many in the hellos in the chat from all over the world. So thank you for joining today. We want to foster career development and to promote excellence in the field of licensing. So just quickly about me from an educational perspective, bachelor's degree in information systems from Carnegie Mellon. I did a dual master's degree in MBA at the University of Pittsburgh, and then about mid-career, a hard pivot to a PhD in bioengineering, studying cancer metastasis, and did some postdoctoral work. I think an important emphasis there is that each one of those degrees I did while I was doing something with my professional career. Then I spent the first part of my career in industry. I've done 5 health tech and biotech startups. I worked for a big company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, doing global marketing, and spent some time in a venture firm. And this second part of my career is now in academia. So I've been with the University of Pittsburgh as the inaugural Assistant Vice Chancellor for Commercial Translation across the 6 schools of the health sciences and served as an associate professor in the School of Medicine. I was recruited to The Ohio State University to lead technology transfer for the entire university, including the Wexner Medical Center. And I'm most recently here at UC Davis and UC Davis Health as the Chief Ventures Officer for the Health Ventures Office. So I'd like to turn this back over to you, Quentin.
Thanks, Don. Now I'm going to hand it over to our other sponsor, Gardner Innovation Search Partners, and this will be Glen Gardner. So Glen, take it away.
Thank you, Quentin, and thank you for everyone for joining us. Really thrilled to know that we have about 500 people from around the world that's joined us. My firm, I've been recruiting in technology transfer and licensing for a little over 20 years now here in my hometown of Columbus, Ohio. Battelle gave me my first tech transfer search, which was the director of tech transfer at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So I started in the national labs, and then I was recruiting out of academia to go into national labs. And we've been proud to work with almost 80 different universities, research institutes, all around the world, mainly in the United States, but we've worked in Australia, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the UK, and the UAE. So I'm just thrilled to be very honored to be here to help present this and work with world-class people like both Don and Wendi. I'll turn it back to you, Don.
Actually, I'll take it back. I threw a curveball earlier, so I'm the one throwing everyone off here. All right. So thank you both, Don and Glen. So everyone, you've had the opportunity to meet Don and Glen, who will also be part of our panel today. Now, I have the honor of introducing our special guest, Wendi Yajnik, Global Head of Academic Partnerships and External Innovation at Novartis Institutes for Biomedical Research. Dr. Yajnik joined NBR from Sanofi, where she was the head of R&D transactions in the Global Business Development and Licensing Group. Prior to Sanofi, Dr. Yajnik was the executive director of innovation for Mass General Brigham, formerly known as Partners Healthcare, directing a team responsible for negotiating research collaborations, out-licensing intellectual property to pharma and biotechnology companies, as well as startup formation, working in collaboration with the Mass General Brigham Innovation Fund and venture capitalists. Before transitioning to the business sector, Dr. Yajnik was an assistant professor of medicine and pathology at New York University School of Medicine, focusing on HIV-1 research. So I'd like to say welcome, Dr. Yajnik. And in case you're asking yourself, who's this guy who's been talking all of this time? My name is Quentin Thomas. I'm co-founder of Chat with Leaders Media and host of the Gardner Innovation Search Partners podcast. At Chat with Leaders Media, we create compelling podcasts, live events, and content strategy for purpose-driven companies. We specialize in connecting these organizations with their core audiences, their people and customers, through engaging and meaningful content. And I started my career in technology transfer as a fellow at the University of Florida's Office of Technology Licensing. I served as a marketing manager in the Office of Technology Transfer at Emory University, then transitioned into industry in a customer success role at the software company Infotech, where I also served on the product team. Now you can say I've come full circle, serving in technology transfer through my own company and as the host of the Gardner Innovation Search Partners podcast. Now, enough of me talking. Let's dive into our discussion. So the first question that I'm going to ask to our panelists is, can you explain the primary titles and roles within technology licensing in both industry and academia? How do these titles typically reflect the responsibilities and expectations in each sector? And I think for this first one, I'll hand it over to you, Don.
Yeah, thank you, Quentin. I'd be happy to take this first one. I'll take it from the perspective of academia. I think the range of titles and roles really depends upon the office structure itself. I think many are familiar with the concept of cradle to grave licensing versus more of a functional organizational structure for licensing. And so in the former, cradle to grave, licensing officers tend to do it all, or licensing managers, as they're sometimes referred to. And then in the latter, the functional side of a licensing shop in academia is broken down by certain key elements of the licensing process. So the intake process, the disclosure process, people that specialize in intellectual property strategy and filing and management, those that are more keen and experienced in marketing. There's a deal making side and some post deal management. So it really just depends on how your office is structured. And Wendi, I'm sure you have some thoughts about how this is structured in industry.
Sure, I'm happy to share that. So in industry, it's we in Novartis, I got to actually form my own strategy for what the structure should look like, because I was the first head for academic partnerships and external innovation, which was a lot of fun, actually, to see what I didn't come with a lot of preconceived notions of what I thought it should happen. I needed to understand where the company was at first and then build. But in terms of structure, it's basically, you go from manager, associate director, depending on which area you're in, but it's pretty similar to having, a real career path where you go from manager, AD director, executive director, vice president, senior vice president. What I will say, it's the leveling process for promotions is very rigorous. There's a huge evaluation process, very strict criteria to understand what the role is. Why do we need that role? And I would say I would even say it's heavily scrutinized to make sure we have the right roles in place for these functions.
Great. And Glenn, I don't know if you wanted to add anything there as well.
No, nope.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
The next one.
I felt like they covered everything there myself too. All right, so next question, just talking about roles as well. What specific skills and experiences are most valued in technology licensing positions in industry versus academia? And, maybe since we started with Don last time, maybe we can start with you, Wendi. Like, what are those common skills that are, that you see as being more valued and potentially ones that are transferable between the two?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's so much from academic licensing, research collaboration skills that you develop is transferable to industry. I would say having a really strong scientific background is key, especially in the life science industry. A working knowledge of intellectual property. Luckily, I was a person that did the cradle to grave licensing, so I got to experience all those parts when I was in academia. Having a good academic network is really important for your growth and collaborations and mentorship. Being a team player, because when you are a generalist in academia, you kind of do everything. You do the marketing, the invention disclosures, the deal making, et cetera. But in the industry setting, it's very much a team approach for doing any kind of deal. You have IP, legal, business development. And so it's really important that everybody has a specific role and that you work as a team. What I will say, and having good business skills, having that business acumen is key. What I would say is one of the things that I think people lack in academia is that they don't get to present. They don't have the presentation skills they need when they get to industry, because there are a lot of presentations, there are a lot of slides in your life. And so I think if I could give one message, you will acquire those skills in your daily job, but the presentation skills are going to be really key to help you have that executive presence when you're in a formal setting and giving a presentation.
Right. And Don?
Yeah, many of those skills and experiences that Wendi mentioned cross over into academia. I'd like to highlight a few from the soft skills domain that are sometimes a bit overlooked. in favor of things like intellectual property expertise or scientific expertise, maybe some computational expertise. I mean, those are all very important. In fact, I think those are just sort of the antes to be part of that, So I'd like to highlight a few, which include responsiveness. I think that's a very important skill set. Being able to set expectations with the inventors and having a really strong ability to prioritize the work, because oftentimes there's more work than can be done in any given day. Transparency is very important as a skill. Really being able to communicate to your peers, your colleagues, as well as the faculty that you're supporting, what is the process and where are we with any given invention and opportunity. Collaboration is key. In fact, I always say collaboration is key to success. And so really being thoughtful and empathetic about other people, other stakeholders, and putting yourself in other people's shoes can really help smooth out the process, because there's a lot of complexity in technology licensing. And finally, accountability, really standing up and saying, here's what I'm going to do, and then deliver on what you say that you're going to do. So I think these are really important skills, soft skills, that translate and transcend even those harder skills, not harder as in difficulty, but the hard skills such as the sciences and computation and so forth.
Yeah, that's great. I think one thing that we're hearing are it does go beyond the hard science skills, right? From both sides. There is the scientific background, but a lot of it seems like relationship and stewarding your time well, being able to have those types of relationships. And I think that's really valuable and important to note, that you have to have those soft skills as well.
And I think what happens with those soft skills combined with the hard skills is what you end up doing is building trust. And with trust comes efficiency. And so that's a real key to developing and using your skills to get ahead in your career.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, and Glenn?
I wanted to go back to Wendi on the first question.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, since I'm mainly academic focused, what I've realized in industry, there's a lot different titles. Like in academia, you don't have the search and evaluation function. And also, that there's definitely a more of a legal component. And it seems like what some universities are going to now is a more industry approach with a first and second seat licensing person. Can you touch on just a few of those roles for our more academic people on this? That question makes sense?
If I can go, I will say yes. So that's what I meant by, having different functions. But the career ladder is very similar in terms of promotions. So we in fact have a search and evaluation group just for academic innovation. We have a transaction group just for academic innovation. And more recently, because we're doing more strategic partnerships, we have an alliance management group. So it's very much tailored to the skill set we need. And that's really important. I mean, to get the right people in the right place to do the right work at the right time. I know it sounds like a lot of things have to happen, but it's actually probably the key to have the right people in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's great. And, just going on, just talking about building up, being able to acquire the skills and expertise needed in those areas. How important are things like additional degrees or professional certifications for career advancement? Don, you're with CLP. You want to speak to that first?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think really, maybe I'm stating the obvious. This depends on your career aspirations. There can be a lot of advantages to degrees and credentials, but you have to know, why you're pursuing that. In my experience so far, it tends to be that the more senior positions, so the senior licensing manager roles or the associate director roles, or certainly a director of a tech transfer office, for example, those roles with more responsibility, including managing people, I think when you're looking for opportunities in those areas, the hiring managers tend to favor people at the baseline with CLP, RTTP, other credentials. And I think that's because certifications like CLP, they demonstrate a mastery of the material, of the licensing profession, but they also provide evidence that the candidate for the position is ambitious, that they're likely taking calculated, smart risks in their career, and that they're investing in themselves, and therefore that person will be investable by the organization. So I think beyond just the credential itself and what it means in terms of mastery, it means so much more than that.
Yeah. And Wendi, from the industry side of things, are things like degrees and certifications something that will make a candidate stand out?
Yeah, so I would say, having a strong science background, having a PhD makes a big difference because we work in the research part of Novartis and work with a lot of scientists. So that instant credibility is really helpful to get to the heart of what the scientific gaps and needs are for the organization. I think CLP has value in that you become a content expert, and that's very important, especially in the transaction part of the group. Even patent agency is a very important. I don't know if you have to be a patent agent, but having a really working knowledge of patents is important. We do work with patents and legal a lot, and it's important to be able to also guide our patent and legal people internally as to what's going on in the external world, because there is this difference in culture, right, between what academic freedom as well as industry and looking at product development. So I think having some patent background is also key.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to ask a follow-up question because there's actually a question in our Q&A that goes directly to something you just said, Wendi, having a working knowledge of IP or patents. So could you speak a little bit, or Don, you could as well too, just to what level of knowledge or are you looking for, or how can someone demonstrate that they have a working knowledge in IP and patents?
For me, it would be understanding patent prosecution, understanding the basis of the claims, understanding the patents or the science enough to identify conflicts in the scopes, because we have internal projects, and then we have a concern about what comes in and contamination. So having that working knowledge of patents is really important to us. And our transaction team does that first step, actually, to make sure the things that are coming in actually are okay, and they're not a risk to the company to bring in the technologies.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. And so just moving on as well too, talking about differences between academic and industry. One thing that we see a lot lately, especially since COVID, is this looking for stability in work as well, job stability, and a lot of shakeup in different industries as well. Can you each speak, a little bit to difference in job stability between industries? Is there a difference? And what does that look like? Yeah.
Yeah, I can take that because, like Wendi, been on both sides of the industry and academic side of the world. Everything from startups to big company like Thermo Fisher, and several billion-dollar research academic enterprises. And I'd say in each one of those examples, there was no such thing as stability. Because change is constant. I think Albert Einstein said that the measure of intelligence is the ability to adapt to change. And I think that's something that's really important for people to have a takeaway. If you're seeking stability, you're not going to find it. Seek your ability to be resilient and adapt to change. And that's going to allow you to not have stability control your career. And I would say even in the last 10 years, we've seen perhaps an acceleration of job instability. I mean, just think of even what's happening with Starbucks today with the new CEO just recently, who's likely going to transform that culture. And so you can imagine how many people are there at Starbucks thinking, what's going to change? And the question becomes not what's going to change, but also how can I change with it? And so I think that in academia, for some, there might be this false misperception that academia is stable and safe, and it's not. There's a tremendous amount of turnover at the senior leadership level, at the chancellor level, at the president level, at the dean level. And with that turnover, there's oftentimes new philosophy for the institution. And that oftentimes crosses over into the licensing office philosophy. So that mission and purpose may change, the goals may change. And so again, the key is to adapt. So don't worry about change, focus on your adaptability.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we say one thing in pharma, that's constant is change. The portfolios change. We're in this space, we're not in this space of science. Restructuring is really a reality. My previous employer, we went through that, reorganization 3 different times. I was there for 3.5 years. I think in some ways, you really have to be resilient to be in pharma, and I guess any job, like you said. But I also think, taking smart risks is important too in life to challenge yourself. So I took this job as the first head. It was my first day. My boss gave me a chip that said, take smart risks. And this was one of them. So I still have it on my desk. But yeah, I think it's a reality. But you can't live that way either. You have to just move forward.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, take smart risk. And so, and actually, Glenn, you have a unique perspective as well too. I'm not sure if you'd like to chip in on that question too about what job stability. I mean, particularly in academia.
I would really echo what Don said, and how the grandparents of tech transfer, Lita Nelson at MIT and Kathy Koo at Stanford stayed there for 30 years apiece is really amazing. It's their ability to be resilient to change. But like Don said, the tech transfer, from the tech transfer side, it's moving very fast. It's evolving. It's becoming more complex. People are demanding more things. So, stay ahead of the game. Get these certifications. Raise your hand for more positions. Network in this community. The Autumn community is very open. LES is another great organization, and we're highly active in both. But what they say is tech transfer is a full contact sport, and roll up your sleeves and make those contacts.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. And also, I just want to say a quick reminder to the audience, because we're getting some great questions coming in here, and we will have a Q&A at the end, but some of these questions are actually hitting on some things that we wanted to address during the webinar anyway. So this one is actually related to a question that was submitted. And actually, I'll just read from them. They said, for those of us who are already university tech transfer roles, could you please go into more detail on making the transition from academic tech transfer to industry side of the house? And we actually would love to hear from both sides, because again, Don and Wendi, you both have that, unique perspective going either direction, right? And so, yeah, what are some of those challenges that professionals might face, and just what would you say to someone who's looking at making that transition? Since this question was coming more from university to academic or to industry, we'll start with Wendi.
Sure. You know what, I have to say that since we focus on academic innovation, bringing in academic innovation to the early stage pipeline, for me, it was key to hire industry people, hire academic people to come work in our transactions group. I really thought it was important for people to understand transactions from the academic side to the industry side, so that we can actually educate our patent attorneys and our legal folks as well. So most of our transaction team is actually from academia. We actually looked for that in particular. It's great to have both experiences, but I think it was really key for us to kind of bring that external perspective into our daily work, actually. Also, I say networking is really important. I know a lot of times I know that in negotiations, it seems like it's us against them, whoever's us and whoever's them, but get away from that actually, if you can. Networking is so important. Both jobs that I had in industry came from people I worked with in industry that saw value to the way I work and my positions on things. And so I was recruited in that way. So I always say, don't die on your sword for a particular, I don't know, issue. Don't say it's policy. Try to figure out what the other side is saying. It makes a big difference in your career, I think, to have that relationship.
Yeah. And Don?
Yeah. I'd also add that it will be very important for you coming from academia to industry to be very specific and be very good at storytelling of your accomplishments and where you took accountability, where you set and achieved very specific goals, and the impact that that had for you and for others. And so, industry, and this is a generalization, which doesn't always hold true in every case, of course, tends to operate at a bit of a faster paced tempo. And so I think it's going to be really important that if you're interviewing for an industry position, to carry forward that storytelling with your many accomplishments on the academic side, but match the tempo and the culture that the industry opportunity has. And one of the best ways to do that, and Wendi mentioned that, is your networking. So it will be very important for you, if you're interested in an industry opportunity, to meet people in that company specifically, get to know them first, get to know that culture first, get to know that company first beyond their webpage and their reputation, and ask yourself, is this the right fit for me? Okay, and then you could learn about how you could market yourself to that industry opportunity.
Yeah. And Glenn?
And I've had this question asked to me all kinds of times about how do I branch over to industry, and it's I'm surprised by, and hopefully this comment goes over well, but my thought is, do your job as a licensing officer. Take your hottest technology that you think, after you've read Novartis's website on what they're looking forward to, and or whoever it is, or if your hottest thing is a CAR T, whatever the heck it is, I'm not a scientist, and you go out and you figure out who are the startups that are actually need this thing, and you're doing your business development job from a tech transfer office. But if you're presenting things in a good light to pharma or biotech, and you make those personal connections with your counterparts across the aisle, then you can, once you develop this relationship, you can say, hey, we've done this deal. If you ever have people on our team, just keep me in mind. And my guess is that's probably how Wendi got her position at Novartis. I would assume doing deals with Novartis.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So, anyways, we
Fair
can
answer.
go on to the next question. I didn't want to put you on
And
the spot.
That's all right.
and some encouragement for those on this webinar. Think beyond your core function today. What about marketing? What about sales? What about operations? That there are so many other dimensions in industry that are available to you, and you have a lot of skills and experience and expertise in the licensing field that are portable to functional roles that may at first blush feel orthogonal to your expertise, but they're actually highly portable. And again, just to emphasize, that's why it's so important for you to network and to socialize with those individuals at those companies and really expand the aperture of the type of job function that you may be interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. With what you all are talking about right now, I think it's relevant to pull in another question from the Q&A here, because it fits very perfectly, because people are asking, what's the best path for like someone in academic TTO to transfer to industry in terms of finding the role? Like, are there tips on, like you're talking about, Don? There's different roles in industry that someone could go into, and so for both of you, like how would you advise someone to find that fit that works best for them and where they can contribute best?
Yeah, I'd say just going back to the networking, find a friend, so to speak, or a friend of a friend who knows somebody in the company, and offer the opportunity to take somebody to lunch, to meet somebody for coffee. I think some people may underestimate the willingness of people to carve out some of their own time to help others. And so, be bold and take some calculated risks. And if you don't have a friend or a friend of friend, then a cold call. I think Steve Jobs famously said many years ago when he got his start at Apple, he reached out to the CEO of HP, I think it was, out of the phone book, to borrow some hardware and to get his start. Nobody knew who Steve Jobs was at the time. So be bold, take risks, and explore, and you'll be successful with that recipe.
We also actually, we do look at LinkedIn a lot. We post a lot of jobs on LinkedIn, especially in my group for transactions, alliance management, search and evaluation. So, and brass ring is also something we post a lot of jobs on. So I think, but networking is always the best. I totally hear you. Being on panels, like make an effort to be on a panel with academia, industry interactions. It goes a long way, actually.
Yeah.
That collaboration on a panel.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm happy you said that about LinkedIn. I for one, I'm sure there are probably others in the audience who felt this way, that LinkedIn seems like it's just a black hole to put things into. So that's good. That's good to say that. And another follow-up question to this as well too is applying to things that are advertised like just cold, like from the website or whatnot. Is it successful? I think some people are asking that. Like, is it successful just to apply cold?
So often people reach out to me if they see something cold on there and they know that I work here. They will write to me and say, "There's a job I'm looking at. Can you tell me about it? Do you know?" And I do it. And do you know who the manager is? And if I do, I will make that extra step because we want the best talent here. So I have done that in the past to help people.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be par for the course if you're looking for a new opportunity to send out as many applications as is possible that's relevant to where you want to go. But to emphasize Wendy's point even more, to follow up with the hiring manager or others within the organization. And here's why. If I'm the hiring manager and I'm receiving an email cold or a resume cold, I'm going to look for why not to follow up with that person. I'm looking to, because there's so many coming in, I have to look at ruling people out.
Mm.
And so if that person reached out to me directly and established a real-time dialogue, even if just over email or some LinkedIn chat, that I'm less about ruling them out and thinking, how might I rule them in? And so it tips you into that favor.
Yeah. All right, great.
And
I didn't. Oh, go ahead, Glenn. Yes.
what I always say
Yeah.
is there's no traffic on the extra mile. And what Don and Wendy just said is go the extra mile. Don't just say to whom it may concern. When I see to whom it may concern, it means that they didn't really do their homework. So, make it personal. If you say, if in Don's case, if they went to Carnegie Mellon, I would make some reference to say, hey, we're both, Carnegie Mellon alums, and really find ways, do your homework, make it personal.
And I would even say, it's really important to know, like if you're applying for a job at Novartis, it would be important for you to know some of our products, actually. It's all on the web. What disease areas we're focused on. I mean, you don't need to have all the information, but I think you have to be able to have a dialogue of some sort so that we know you really did your homework, that you really are interested. Have some good questions. Oh, maybe you didn't understand something. That's a good question to ask. I think we hear about being curious. One of our big pillars is curiosity. being inspired, being curious, unbossed, so some of those integrity, all of those things. So we appreciate when people ask questions and make us think a little harder too.
Yeah, that's great. So just a little bit of extra effort there, just to stand out as well, is what I'm hearing. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here, because we have plenty of great questions coming up in the Q&A. But so I'm going to fast forward to some of the actionable advice that you might give to someone. And one piece of that is, let's just start there. What is one piece of actionable advice you would give to early career professionals in tech transfer or, tech licensing to help them advance in their careers? One specific example would, be, are there any platforms you recommend them going to or connecting in, or organizations or networking type events? And so I'll start with Wendi. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So that's, of course, we do Autumn. We go to Autumn. It's a great network of people, old friends, new friends. Industry presence is there. We always sponsor the closing reception, so please come meet some of our folks. We bring a pretty big team. We also do UIDP, and being on panels. I think the best way is to trust yourself. Don't have this, oh, I can't approach them. I think a lot of people feel intimidated maybe when you're meeting somebody new, but really trust yourself and what you bring to the table. You are the expert. That's why you have the job you have. So I would say, it's okay not to know all the answers, but you are the expert. I always say you're the product, you're the asset. So go for it. You meet people.
Yeah. And Don?
Yeah, I think it's worth repeating what Wendi said. Take more risks, believe in yourself, be confident.
Yeah.
And a term I like to use is calm-fident. Be calm about it, and
That's a good one.
really be centered.
Yeah, that's great. And Glenn, any advice you would give?
Yeah, I think it's great because I think when we were at Autumn at the UIDP meeting, I really talked for a good time with Wendi, and once again I was a little intimidated because I know how high powered she was at Novartis, and I've heard great things, but just everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. And the one thing that I'm just thrilled why I stay in the business I am, and I so passionate about it. It's a very collegial industry that we're in. It's like everybody's marching for the same thing. They want to find cures, that they love the science. And so what I found is everyone is so approachable in this industry. And, it's like everyone seems to just all be, all forward. And once again, get out to those conferences, the Autumns, the LESs, and the scientific things, the JP Morgans and bios, and roll up your sleeves and just have a smile on your face and be courteous and give back to the industry like Don and Wendi are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I may a bit build on what Glenn just mentioned and tie it into, I think, a question that's been asked by some participants. I see Claire Driscoll, the director of tech transfer for UC Santa Barbara, asked a question about how industry views someone, or even academia, with good credentials and experience, but they've moved around a lot in their careers. And so it's a question around, going from job to job, maybe too frequently. Is there a minimum number of years that you need to stay? And I think it ties into this discussion because, really it's a journey.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, leave your organization better than how you found it, and you will always be successful. And so if you're going from job to job or industry to industry, if you've got a good reason, a good story, and you've left things better than when you found it, that's going to come across, in my opinion, 9 times out of 10 as a strength. Will you get ruled out on occasion because it looks like you've been moving around here too much? Perhaps, but would that be the right organization for you would be a question I would ask. So be bold and take some risks and make sure your journey is a diverse one. If diversity in terms of your career is important to you. We have a lot of colleagues that have been in the same organization for decades and they love it, and that's perfectly fine too. There's no right or wrong.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so we'll go ahead and shift gears to the Q&A section now. This is just a quick reminder that you can submit your questions in the Q&A section. We do have some great questions coming into the webinar chat itself, but if you don't mind, just copy and paste those over into the Q&A section. You'll find the Q&A feature, the button for the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window in order to submit that question. We have probably about 13 minutes left, about 12, 13 minutes left for Q&A. So if we don't get to your question, don't worry. You'll be receiving a follow-up from Gardner Innovation Search Partners as well. And we'll look to put together some nice resources for you as well. You can also reach our panelists via the contact information, which Jeff has posted into the chat window as well. So jumping into Q&A, first question. And I'll give this one to Don first. How crucial is it to have an MBA in addition to a PhD? Can professional experience alone provide the necessary skills and knowledge, or does an additional degree offer significant advantages?
Yeah, I think the skills, the experience, the storytelling, be able to connect what you've done with the impact is the most powerful. I think you can do that without a PhD. You can do that without an MBA. You can do that even without a CLP, even though I think a CLP is very important. But those aren't like requirements. I think your ability to get things done, to collaborate, to support other people, to be transparent, I mean, those are the key things for you. That said, if you have two candidates that are equal otherwise, it can be the case that with additional credentials like a CLP, PhD, or MBA could bump you up over the other candidate if all things else are equal. But I don't think that those credentials trump otherwise the direct experience. And so the last thing I'll mention on this is that there are so many different ways you can pursue an MBA, a PhD, a CLP. I'm an example. I've done all of those things. And not once was I ever full-time in an academic program, even for my PhD. So I've always balanced that with some professional work. So I've been working full-time and advancing either a startup company or even working for a big company, studying for my MBA while I was, on a business trip. When my colleagues were out, enjoying themselves after a tough day on the job. So it's about that personal sacrifice and what's important to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Don. And I'll go ahead and go on to the next question, unless Glenn or Wendy, you wanted to add to that one. Okay. So this one is for you, Wendy. Can you speak a little more about how success was defined and measured in your tech transfer role at Novartis?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. So actually, success was defined by what strategy plan I had when I came in and how I was going to implement it. That was like the main thing. I had to go to one of our boards, leadership boards, and present the strategy and get it approved and then execute on it. The strategy changes with time as you learn new things. I think Novartis, our function has a lot of support at the highest levels. And so that person really does understand what are the things we can actually make possible with academic innovation. The platforms are amazing. Disease biology is amazing. In academia, target biology is amazing. So I think for me, it's been really wonderful to have somebody in leadership that understands what academia's sweet spots are and executing on that strategy.
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
I don't have numbers that we have to have and meet. I maybe have them for myself, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And also, I want to acknowledge that Claire has submitted some really nice questions as well. I know we did answer a couple of them too. And this one, I think this one went back to talking about networking or connecting with other people besides being on a panel. She was asking about like, what about other things such as writing articles or giving presentations in order to be able to get that foot in the door or build that connection with people? Like, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yes, there are papers that get posted on LinkedIn, and I do read them, of course, because it's relevant to our field. But I would still say, getting on panels and doing presentations, at some of the big conferences really make a difference. We also send people, that are in our search and evaluation team to scientific conferences so that they could see what's the latest and greatest. So if you have a chance and you have an important technology, maybe you can go with your scientists and network that way to find people that actually would be interested in science and then build that relationship.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, other things that can be done, do a little consulting. If your university or if your industry, if the company that you're working with allows for that, and if you do the proper disclosures and conflict of interest and commitment is all like green light, think about reaching out and helping another organization with a very specific project where you have some expertise. That's a great way, if done appropriately, to expand your network and to get yourself out there.
Yeah, great. Um, this question is a highly upvoted question, so thanks to the audience for submitting these. And I think it's applying more particularly to academia, but it says there's a trend in tech transfer that to move up, you have to move out, leading to significant loss of the institutional knowledge and relationships built. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if I understand the question correctly, there can be sort of this sort of cap of where you can grow and advance your career. Because a tech transfer office in a university can't just infinitely expand and create opportunities. So I would say that that is sometimes the case. If you're in a university where that is the case, then sometimes you have to move out to grow in your career. And that's okay. And that goes back to taking risks and developing yourself. I've certainly done that in my career. There's also, I think it's incumbent upon leadership in academic institutions to create the conditions for success, for team development, for professional development, and be thoughtful about how those positions are structured, how the levels are structured, and to provide a very clear path throughout, how you might want to advance your career. From the earliest kind of introductory stages of one's early career to kind of late career stages, I think there can be some re-engineering to support that.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem, Glenn. Um, and Wendy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that one as well too, but
No, fine.
okay, great. All right. So, in this question, I feel like there's a couple of questions here about well, let me just ask one of them. How about this? So this one says, what recommendations would you offer to a professional with substantial experience and credentials from another country looking to enter the US tech transfer ecosystem? What strategies could enhance their acceptance and integration into this field? And I feel like, yeah, Glenn, I was gonna call on you.
First of all, sorry, of all the days for my internet to die, which normally doesn't. I'm actually tethered off my phone now, so good thing I have 5G.
Yeah.
I've been promoting this a lot because I like the diversity of thought. And we just wrapped up the search for the #2 person at Cambridge Enterprise in the UK. Like I said, we've done searches in Australia, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. And I think there's a wealth of talent um, around the globe. And I'd like to get that diversity of thought here to the United States to our clients. But the issue really comes back to visa issues. And so what we've been trying to tell our clients to is, hey, will you be open to sponsoring a visa? If you want to look at the oil and gas industry, there's people at, KAUST University in Saudi Arabia. How do we get those folks over here? The people that are out of the UK, that their salaries are a lot lower than here in the United States, but the Cambridge and Oxfords of the world, they do a great job and they have a different way of doing business. So I'm very big on this diversity of thought.
Great.
Yeah, that diversity is very important. The global diversity at the CLP, Certified Licensing Professionals, we're a global organization. We have a lot of intention to involve the global community in licensing, and that credential is portable, really in any country. Another example is our new Chief Innovation and Economic Development Officer for UC Davis, George Baxter, who joined us a few months ago, came from Scotland, from Edinburgh. And so we're able to now benefit from, what worked well there, and for us to change and adapt. So I think globalization and kind of breaking into the US from outside the US is very doable, very achievable. And it goes back to many, if not all of the tenets that we shared today.
Yeah, great. And I'll ask one last question. There's great questions in here. And for those that we didn't get to, again, we'll follow up after the webinar. This one's more so for Wendi. What type of opportunities are there in industry if you have a good working knowledge of IP, natural business acumen, the skills of a liaison, and extensive knowledge of university research infrastructure, but you don't have the scientific background?
I would say maybe project management or operations is a very good opportunity for you. We have lots of people that do, are strategy and operations folks in the different disease areas and functional areas, or project managers leading individual projects so I think there is opportunity in industry for that.
Great. Thank you. And I'd feel remiss if I didn't just ask this one last thing. 20 seconds each or 10 seconds each. What's just one piece of advice you would leave with our audience right now?
I would say trust yourself. It's very important.
Great.
I'm going to quote Tara Brach, who wrote this incredible book called Radical Acceptance. And she said, and I quote, "Rather than relaxing and enjoying who we are and what we're doing, we're comparing ourselves with an ideal and trying to make up for the difference." And that really spoke to me, because throughout my early career, I was looking at all these other people and where they were and comparing myself to them, and why am I so far from that? Really, it's about identifying what you want, what each of you want, and comparing yourself to you over time, not to others. So stay calm, confident, and start today.
Awesome. Glenn, you got to follow that up.
I think from my side, what I say is give back. So volunteer, be on a committee at Autumn, be on a committee at LES, go, because what you'll get at, you'll put in a lot of work. I know all these people, Don and Wendi are giving time out of their valuable day to give back to the community. But the more you engage as a volunteer, you will get it back in spades.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. That is all we have time for today. I'd like to give a big thanks to our panelists. If you have further questions or would like to connect with them, again, Jeff has posted their contact information in the chat. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to Claire Driscoll at UC Santa Barbara for all of her contributions to this. And another thank you to Suzanne Hagman at Gardner Innovation Search Partners and Jeff Bond at Chatwit Leaders Media for their contributions. And a special thanks to our sponsors, Gardner Innovation Search Partners and Certified Licensing Professionals Incorporated. If you're interested in learning more about them, visit gardnerisp.com and licensingcertification.org. Again, those links are available in the chat as well. And last but not least, thank you to all of you who tuned in. You could have spent your time anywhere and you chose to spend it with us. We appreciate your gift of time, and we look forward to seeing you next time.